For 16 long, brutal years, Hannibal Barca was basically the boogeyman of Italy. He had absolutely bled the Roman Republic, made its legendary legions look like fools, and brought it right to the edge of total collapse. But, the Romans learned a thing or two from all that pain. They learned that to beat a monster like Hannibal, you don't just fight him, you have to go for the heart. So that's the story we're diving into today. How Rome, pushed to its absolute breaking point, decided that just winning wasn't good enough. They wanted revenge, they wanted annihilation.
In this one sentence, this right here hangs over our entire story like a death sentence. It comes from the Roman senator Cato the Elder, and you gotta understand this wasn't just a political talking point. It became a total obsession, a relentless drumbeat in the Roman Senate that for years demanded not just the defeat, but the complete and utter erasure of their greatest enemy.
So, that's the big question, right? This wasn't just another war. It was a clash of civilizations, a bitter, personal feud between two superpowers that had been at each other's throats for generations. So how did it go from a fight for control to a campaign of just methodical, cold-blooded destruction?
All right, so to figure this out, we're going to follow a 5-act tragedy. We'll kick things off with a brilliant, game-changing strategy. Watch two legends finally collide, and then explore this really tense 50-year peace. After that, we dive into Rome's growing obsession with total destruction. And finally, we'll see how a new kind of empire was born from the ashes.
Our story really kicks off with this radical idea from a young, brilliant general, Publius Cornelius Scipio. See, he'd spent his whole life studying Hannibal, the man who was terrorizing his homeland. And he cooked up a plan so daring, so out of the box, that the old guard in the Roman Senate was frankly terrified of it. He said, "We're not going to fight Hannibal in Italy anymore. We're taking the war straight to his home, to Africa."
Scipio's plan, and you can see it laid out right here, was just a perfect mirror image of Hannibal's own strategy. For years, Hannibal was living off the land in Italy, convincing Rome's allies to flip. Scipio's plan? Do the exact same thing, but in Hannibal's backyard. He would hit Carthage where it lived, forcing the great general to finally abandon his campaign in Italy to come home and save his own city. It was pure psychological and strategic genius.
And this quote from Scipio himself, well, it just says it all, doesn't it? He knew he couldn't beat Hannibal at his own game on his own turf. So he just changed the entire game. He wasn't just moving an army, he was sending a message, one written in fire and smoke, a signal that only Hannibal would understand. And that signal was, your time is up. The hunter is now the hunted.
And guess what? The plan worked. Perfectly. Total panic breaks out in Carthage. Their hero, the undefeated legend they called the Invincible, gets the call. He has to come home. So after 36 years away, Hannibal Barca returns, not as a conqueror, but as a defender. And waiting for him, out on the plains near a town called Zama, is the young Roman who had so brilliantly turned his own tactics against him.
Okay, so before the slaughter starts, one of the most incredible moments in all of military history happens. Hannibal and Scipio agree to meet. No guards, no backup, just the two of them, the old master and the young prodigy, riding out into the no-man's land between their armies to just look each other in the eye. It's this moment of incredible, quiet respect before the storm. Hannibal warns the young Scipio about the winds of fortune, and Scipio just coolly replies that he's not there for peace, he's there for total victory. So Hannibal unleashes his ultimate weapon, this terrifying wave of war elephants, basically a wall of death meant to just shatter the Roman lines. But Scipio was ready. He'd been studying this guy for years. So instead of a solid wall of shields, he arranges his legions in columns, with these wide-open lanes between them. As the elephants charge, Roman trumpeters just blast this horrifying, deafening noise. The elephants panic, and looking for an escape, they charge straight down the safe lane Scipio created, running harmlessly right through the Roman army. With Hannibal's main weapon totally neutralized, Scipio's cavalry smashed into the Carthaginian flanks. The master of the ambush had been perfectly and decisively trapped.
And that is the number of Carthaginian soldiers who died on the field at Zama. 20,000. Hannibal himself barely got away with his life. Just like that, the Second Punic War was over. Rome had won.
But here's where the story takes a weird turn. Rome didn't destroy Carthage. Not yet. After Zama, they imposed a peace treaty, and for the next 50 years, this fragile, super tense quiet settled over the Mediterranean. Carthage was allowed to keep existing, but only as a shadow of its old self. A rich trading city, sure, but one that had been completely declawed.
The terms of surrender were absolutely crushing. Carthage had to give up its entire navy, hand over all its remaining war elephants, and pay a ridiculous amount of silver that would take decades to pay off. But the most important part, the one that would come back to haunt them, was the last one:
Carthage was forbidden from ever waging war, even to defend itself, without getting permission from Rome first. They were left rich, but totally, completely vulnerable.
So, for half a century, Carthage just focuses on trade and gets rich again. They play by the rules. But back in Rome, something darker was growing. For some Romans, the very idea of a prosperous Carthage, no matter how weak, was just an intolerable threat. And all that fear and hatred found its champion in one man, Cato the Elder, a powerful senator who developed a terrifying obsession. He ended every single speech he gave in the Senate with these exact words. It didn't matter what they were talking about. Tax reform, a new aqueduct, whatever. He would finish his point and then add, "Furthermore, I consider that Carthage must be destroyed." It was just this relentless, poisonous campaign to convince Rome that peace wasn't an option, only total erasure would do. At this point, Rome was just looking for an excuse, any excuse. And eventually they got one. Carthage's neighbor, Numidia, who happened to be a Roman ally, started raiding Carthaginian lands. After years of begging Rome to do something about it, Carthage finally put together an army to defend itself. And that was it. That was the tripwire. By defending its own borders, Carthage had waged war without permission. The Roman Senate voted. The Third Punic War was on.
But this time, there weren't going to be any brilliant battles in the open field. This wasn't a war. It was a siege, an execution. For 3 agonizing years, the massive, beautiful city of Carthage held out against the full, relentless might of the Roman legions. It was a slow, brutal, grinding death.
Inside those walls, the people fought with this unbelievable courage, the kind you only find when you know you're fighting for your very existence. They melted down statues to forge new weapons. In this famous, heartbreaking act of defiance, the women of Carthage cut off their long hair so it could be woven into ropes for the catapults. Every citizen, slave and free alike, became a soldier. Every single house became a fortress.
But it just wasn't enough. In 146 BCE, the walls were finally broken. Just look at these numbers. Before the siege, Carthage was this huge, bustling city of almost 500,000 people. After the Romans were done, only 50,000 were left alive, and every single one of them was sold into slavery. That right there, that is what annihilation looks like on paper.
This final, horrifying act was led by a man named Scipio Africanus. He was the adopted grandson of the great Scipio who had won at Zama, but his job wasn't to defeat Carthage. His job was to erase it from the face of the earth.
For 6 straight days and nights, the Roman legions fought their way through the city, street by street, house by house. There was no surrender. When the killing finally stopped, the city was set on fire, and it burned for days until there was nothing left but rubble. Then the Romans systematically leveled what was left. Now, the legend that they sowed the land with salt is probably not literally true, but it perfectly captures the spirit of what they did. They wanted Carthage gone, not just from the map, but from memory forever.
But the man overseeing all this destruction, he didn't celebrate. As Scipio Africanus stood on a hill watching this ancient city burn to the ground, he reportedly started to weep. He understood that history moves in cycles. He saw the fall of Troy and the flames of Carthage, and he was terrified that one day some other empire would do to his beloved Rome what he was doing right then. It wasn't a moment of triumph. It was a moment of profound, tragic realization.
And that's the real takeaway here. With its rival gone, utterly destroyed, Rome became the undisputed superpower of the Mediterranean. Their sea was now a Roman lake. The Punic Wars were over. But the republic that had fought for its own survival against Hannibal, that republic was gone. In its place stood an empire, one born from ash and forged in an act of total, merciless war.
And that leaves us with one final, haunting question. Rome got the most absolute victory you can possibly imagine. But by doing that, by choosing annihilation over simply winning, it changed its own soul forever. It really makes you wonder, what's the true price of total victory?